The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back. Canna Chat with the Zigzag Man. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And I have a returning guest. His name is Dan Rush. And Dan, bring us up to date a little bit about how things... Last time we talked, it was right before sentencing. Our interview was released after you were sentenced. And I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to add to what you told us initially.
So thanks, Ralph. Yeah, I've been sentenced now, and I'm going to be going to Terminal Island Federal Correctional Institute in Terminal Island, Los Angeles. And that's a little island off of the city of LA where they have a federal correctional institution, a penitentiary.
Okay, a little easier for your family to stay in touch with you than it would be if you were, say, in the Midwest. So from that standpoint, I'm sure you're somewhat grateful.
No, actually, it's a total surprise, Ralph. I was supposed to be going to a facility in Oregon about 200 miles from my home, and it was not supposed to be a penitentiary. It was supposed to be a satellite camp. And so, as has been typical in this case, the prosecutors, the FBI, the judge, have all seemed to have landed me in the worst case scenario, painted me to be the worst case person, and now I'm sure they're going to be delighted that I'm going to a penitentiary. So, yeah, actually that's not good news, and we just found out today.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I thought, because, first of all, I was figuring proximity to Oakland. You're not. You're up in Crescent City now, which is much closer to the Oregon border than certainly than Oakland. And I didn't know where you were initially slated to be spending your sentence. And wow.
Yeah, well, it's just been typical with this case, Ralph. Like we discussed last time, the prosecutors were just determined to paint me to be this 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week sociopath who has done nothing with a 35-year career, much of which was based on running for elections to achieve my offices, which meant that people loved me enough to vote for me to elect me to those offices.
Right.
In the Democratic Party, in the community, and in the AFL-CIO, that is. In UFCW, my last position was an appointed position. But anyway, yeah, it's typical of what they've done all through the case. When I agreed to make a guilty plea for 2 crimes that I felt as though I had committed, even though it was after 7 years of the FBI running circles on me and having their people just tell me the most outlandish lies and situations while I was literally laying in hospital beds, recovery rooms, recovering from surgeries and other things that happened on the road. I got sick there the last 2 years of the campaign. So they took advantage of that and had their people telling me lies that really amounted, and had my lawyer telling me lies on their behalf, telling me that my family's property was in jeopardy because he had goofed up and written an investment agreement which is something that's not supposed to be paid back. It's just something that is supposed to bring a commercial development to fruition. That guy, they had him reading me scripts from the FBI telling me that, from my lawyer, that my family's property was in jeopardy and that we were going to lose everything and that he was going to devise a very strategic process in which everybody would remain whole. And unfortunately, and especially in some of the times when I was ill, I believed him, and I took his advice, his legal advice to me that was designed to be legal advice from my lawyer, or was supposed to be legal advice from my lawyer, but was designed by the FBI to trick me into awkward positions and into committing a crime.
Dan, hindsight is 20/20. Was there ever a time that you could remember where you look back and you could have said, whoa, right there, something was, before the ball got rolling, from the prosecution standpoint, from the investigator standpoint, I can see where they're out to get you. The feds are still against legalization of marijuana in California. Sessions, the Attorney General, barked some crapola just the other day about, re-examining whether or not they're going to come down on not the medical marijuana, but on recreational marijuana. They have, since Nixon had a report that he authorized a paper written about marijuana, that he authorized being written. He didn't like the results. He covered it up, and that's how it got started years ago. And that's not how it got started. The prohibition on it got started way back, but Nixon's report delayed legalization, and now the same conservative federal government wants to come in and mess with what is California's cash cow. So I can see how you were a tremendous burr in their saddle, and given how I have come to see how the government does things, it doesn't surprise me that they came after you the way they did. But I want to know, with all that building up back then, with their hatred for you being coming out, was there a moment in time you could have done something a little bit differently that you look back on with some regret that you hadn't seized that moment when it was there for you and you just glossed over it? That's how life is sometimes. Is there a moment for you that stands out in your memory?
It wasn't a moment, Ralph. The crime that I committed that was not a product of tricks from the FBI was that I insisted my lawyer to continue to make loan repayments to me. He owed me a lot of money. He owed my firm, my private investigations firm, a lot of money, and in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so when I finally went to work for the International in Washington, D.C., begrudgingly, I might add, I wanted them to fund the process through my local, but they insisted I come to D.C. When I went to D.C., and I encouraged folks to be represented by my lawyer. Now, this is my private lawyer. This is my family's lawyer and my business lawyer for my investigations practice, and somebody that I considered to be a friend. So when I accepted these loan payments from him, where he was repaying a loan to me from before either of us had worked in cannabis, I essentially was committing a violation of the Taft-Hartley Act, which says that union officers and officials cannot accept payments from the industry or its representatives. So as I sincerely told people in the cannabis industry to seek his representation, because I came up with the theories about how to move forward, but he did the actual production of the legal documents. And so of course I encourage people to be represented by him. He was there as we invented the process that never existed before. And he knew it as well as I did. And also it cut down on the number of lawyers in the room when it went time for us to go out and seek support from elected officials and legislators and bureaucrats and agencies and governors and mayors. We had to solicit support from those folks to achieve licensing. And so when we would go before those folks, it was easier to take a coalition represented by one person, by one lawyer, one lobbyist, one union, than it was to have a lot of lawyers who were self-seeking, self-serving, and were going to make sure they made every penny possible that they could before they would be a cooperating member of a coalition. So,
could you not have separated the funds a little bit by putting them in different escrow accounts?
I could have. I could have, and I didn't. And so that's the crime that I committed that I fully accept responsibility for. Now, the way the Taft-Hartley is written, the way the Taft-Hartley Act is written, it's a law that's designed to destroy union leaders. It should be called the Union Leader Destruction Act.
Right. Does the Jimmy Hoffa case, does that bring up stuff with you? Because he was accused of taking money from a union, a small amount of money to fix his house, something like $10,000. And that's how they got him. That's how they got him to go to jail. And it was the union that it was his union. That's what I see an analogy here. This is your union. So did the government come down on you much the way they came down on Jimmy Hoffa?
So I would never compare myself to President Hoffa, who was a much greater man than I. But essentially, they used the same type of tactics where they use these laws that are specifically designed to incriminate and then topple union leaders, and then also use that as a reason for the government to seize the funds of the unions, seize control of the unions through judges that are appointed as trustees. It's the same type of mentality. And, President Hoffa, in his time, in the era that he worked in, he worked with what were at the time the most effective processes to get his Teamster members the best collective bargaining agreements and living conditions in the world. Now, some people in those processes were corrupt, and they did corrupt stuff, but I don't think that President Hoffa lined his own pockets over that type of activity. And there again, I wasn't trying to line my own pockets. I was just merely accepting and then having to demand, because my lawyer was a cheap scoundrel and was trying to get out of paying what he owed to my family. And so I allowed him to continue those payments, so to speak. He became an industry representative at some point. So at some point, those loan repayments to me and my family and my investigations business became illegal payments. not because they were to corrupt anything or anyone. It's just the fact that he was an industry representative. He took a pen and checks, and he pressed the pen on these checks, left ink on them that resulted in so that's what I embrace accepting responsibility for.
Is there anything else, and I'm going to refer to the alleged ties that you had with the dispensary owners to collude with them to enrich yourself, they accused you of, and to make it, to not give the union members the best you could. You want to answer that?
I gave my members everything I had to give, Ralph. I gave my members more than I had to give. And I always have, I always will. I will always give anybody that I'm representing, especially in the workplace, I always give people my most sincere efforts. When the government claims that I was enriching myself at the cost of my members.
All right, specifically, that's what I was trying to ask in my roundabout.
Okay, so let me tell you what happened here. So sometime in 2013, as a result of undercover FBI agents going and intimidating my lawyer, not intimidating him, entrapping him in his own madness. And I got to tell you, when I left town and started traveling 20,000 miles a week, I did not keep a very close eye on this guy. And it turns out that he was soliciting people everywhere, including the cannabis industry, not just. He was soliciting people everywhere. He and his accountant would find people that had illegal income, and then his accountant would refer those people to Mark Trebeek, my lawyer, the one we're talking about, Mark Lawrence Trebeek, and Mark Trebeek would then entice those folks into paying him to launder their money, and also to create fraudulent tax schemes so that they didn't have to pay taxes on their laundered money. In other words, he told people, I am your one-stop shop to launder money, beat your taxes, and go about your business. And so it turns out that he was soliciting people in that way. Now, when I found Mark Trebeek, he was a broken, destitute, alcoholic and drug addict.
That's how I was when you found me. I was a broken down bum radio guy, and look what you made me into.
So I literally took this guy because he just attached himself to me, and I took him to AA meetings and NA meetings, and I told him,
Oh, you were being serious. I mean, he was literally suffering with his demons.
Suffering, yeah. He was, quote unquote, $300,000 in debt, was losing his home, his wife was divorcing him, he had lost the respect of his children and his family, and he was felt as though he was spiraling into more madness. And so everybody that knows me knows that I'm a clean and sober, recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and that I attend anonymous 12-step meetings, and that I practice sobriety and being clean in those programs. And so he appealed to that sense of me, and I took him under my wing. I made him what we would call a sponsee. I became the sponsor. Mm-hmm. And so I began to help him put his life back together, and to build a new law firm, and to rescue his home, and later to at least work out an amiable departure from his wife and their first child. And later they even became friends again. So that was a 10-year process. A few years with me on the road, being out of town all the time, resulted in him going back to his cocaine and ecstasy and other crazy drugs, and going back to his lifestyle of hanging out at raves and doing what he does, and then his propensity for what I've always thought were underage prostitutes. He specifically put his office on the corner of 26th Avenue and East 14th in Oakland, and that's the heart of human trafficking of 14 and 16-year-old prostitutes. And he told me, he said, that's why I'm putting my office there. I just love being in the area, and I don't know what to say about that. So I come to find out in retrospect that he's off doing drugs again. I got people calling me saying this guy's buying drugs from us. He's burning us on the drug deals. He's bringing these inappropriate people around him, and I'm telling people, look, I'm traveling 20,000 miles a week. I'm out here on the road. I don't know what to do. To take care of yourselves. And then I'm talking to him, and he's telling me, oh, no, I'm clean and sober and doing the right things and trying to take care of my family. So also in retrospect, now I find out he was running this money laundering, tax scheme-driven law firm. And so at some point the FBI gets frustrated in trying to find me because there's nothing going on. They don't understand about the loan repayments to me from him. But they, their guts tell them that if they're going to be able to get me, to arrest my lawyer. And since he's making himself an attractive person to be arrested and indicted and prosecuted, which he just received a sentence of 3 years probation, because that's what they do for their rats. They do wonderful things for their rats. They send guys like me that work their asses off for everybody to penitentiaries because I'm the bigger headlines and I'm the person that they're mad at. So anyway, when they
how are you getting through this without becoming
let me answer your
embittered?
question.
Because that doesn't serve you.
Let me answer your question. When they say that I'm enriching myself, so my lawyer has been representing my family trust for a decade in 2013, which our family was trying to build an assisted living care center on it because it's close proximity to Kaiser and 7 other hospitals on Pill Hill in Oakland.
Right.
So Turbeek has taken on this client, Martin Kaufman, with an agreement that he's going to launder his illegal drug money and create a tax scheme and then find a place for him to make an investment. So that's how Kaufman got in my life. Turbeek told me, I have an investor to help with the assisted living care center. And he said, frankly, I want to do this one, him saying that, because it will allow me to pay a $420,000 note on your property that you took out to help us build this law firm, and also to create this assisted living care center for your family. So I told him, if you think it's a good move and you're my lawyer and that's what you're recommending to me, and it will make things easier for you, my friend, the rat, I think it's a good idea. If you think it's a good idea and you tell me that as legal advice. He took the money from Kaufman. And so one thing I wanted, and they made a big, huge criminal conspiracy out of this, I wanted Kaufman, he came and met with me, and I wanted him to work on the development, actually work on it. Since he was going to be involved, and since he was such a bright young guy, and since so much work had to be done with ordering land studies, getting reports,
communicating with the city.
Hiring architects, communicating with the city. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I told him I wanted to help. So I wanted him to help and learn. He went back and told Terbeek he would do that, but he wanted a paycheck every week. Terbeek called me and says the guy wants a paycheck every week. And I said, well, if he's going to be in this development, I want him to be free to do this work because I'm not going to be the only one on the line here to produce a 7-story, 24-unit, skilled nursing, assisted living care center on my own while I'm out here running.
Where did this idea come from? Was this your dream? Did you was it passed on to you?
In 2004, my uncle came down with brain cancer. And so at the time he was living in an assisted living care center in Fairfield. The property we're talking about has been in my family for 5 generations. And literally it's 100 yards from Kaiser's cancer care facility. So when my uncle came down with cancer, I was the one who drove him back and forth 3 and 4 times a week from Fairfield to Oakland's Kaiser facility. And I daily sat in traffic pulling my hair out thinking, well, if Uncle Gene would just move home, we would only have to take him 100 yards every day to get his treatments. And so that's where I got the idea. I was sitting in traffic one day and I said, oh my God, how many other people are sitting in traffic, moving their loved ones around for cancer treatments, and would love to be able to have a good, decent place to put their loved ones in a facility near the hospitals and cancer treatment centers. So that's where the idea for the assisted living care center came from. And that was back in 2004, 2005. Uncle Gene died in 2007. The property went into our family trust. My family asked me to be the trustee and to do something with it. So I thought, okay. So I began to work on conceptually on a development there at the property on West MacArthur in Oakland to turn it into a assisted living care center. And it would be a nice business for the family, keep the property in the family, and it would help people that needed help. So in the next year or two in working on that, and then also Terbeek saying, look, if you borrow, he was also our family lawyer for the trust. So he told me, look, if you take out a loan and help me build a law firm on my own, then you and I can be the lawyer investigator guys of Oakland. And I'll own the firm and you'll have a home, a very productive place. We'll be like partners, even though lawyers and investigators cannot be business partners. It was like
you'll be Perry Mason and the big tall guy. I can't think of his name.
Right.
Right.
And since Terbeek couldn't get a client in a hospital emergency room with $100 bills taped to his forehead, that I now see in retrospect because he's just an incompetent idiot, I said, cool, let's do it. So I took out a loan and I made the funds available in a way so that Mark Terbeek was able to help build himself a law firm. I made sure we both had paychecks for a couple of years. The idea was to build the firm and also to build the assisted living care center for me and my family. He was going to be a partner in it.
Yeah.
And so it was his job as the family lawyer to find the investors and put the deal together. So I come out of UFCW. I've been building grocery stores for 30 years. That's how UFCW creates more membership, is by building more grocery stores for union grocery companies. And so Kaufman gives Terbeek $500,000 in cash He actually showed up at my house with $500,000 in cash and scared the hell out of me. Now, all I know is that my lawyer has sent over an investor, and so here shows up this 23-year-old, very smart kid. He shows up with a bag of $500,000 in a bag, $100 bills. I saw enough of it to tell that. And he says, "Okay, I want in. Here's the money." And I was like, "You have lost your mind. What do you mean, here's the money? Take yourself, take your bag of money, and go back and see the lawyer and have the lawyer tell me what to do. Because I'm sorry. I don't want to know about your money. I'm some poor guy over here trying to represent my members. I don't want to get involved in your criminal conspiracies. So go have a lawyer tell me that everything you're doing is fine, and then we'll talk again." He went back to Turbique. 3 months later, I find out Turbique has made these structured what do you call when you put money in a bank account? Deposit.
I'm the last guy that would know that.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Deposit. 3 months later, I found out Turbique.
Yeah, my dad told me about that. It would be a good idea. And that's the one thing I never listen to him about. My money. Go ahead.
So I find out Turbique has made these deposits into the bank because he tells me, "Yeah, wow, that was a lot of work getting all that money in the bank." And now I'm talking to my lawyer, so I'm like, "Oh, really?" He says, "Yeah, I had to put it in increments of under 5,000 or 10,000. I don't remember."
Yeah, you were laundering money. He was laundering money.
And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're a lawyer. You're supposed to know better." He says, "I'm telling you, don't worry about it. I'm a lawyer. I know what I'm doing. It's all okay." And I, just with this sick feeling in my stomach, I just move on. Well, when I didn't pick up the phone and call the FBI when he told me that, I then became a co-conspirator in his money laundering scheme because I didn't turn him in. So
yeah, it's hard to turn in your trusted friend who you didn't realize. I mean, you sent the guy back to him for approval, and he was the biggest money launderer around. So, yeah.
And not only that, Ralph, I just, I'm a busy guy. I'm not the FBI's boy. I'm not sitting here living my life going, "Ooh, I hope somebody has something that I can turn over to the FBI." There are people out there like that. I'm not one of them. So, and he's assured me, he's my lawyer. He says, "I assure you, this has all been done legally and legitimately. I just got around some paperwork." And I just moved on. So that investment agreement that I signed, that I entered into at my lawyer's advice, said that this was an investment, that the monies would be used to hire consultants, pay for reports, hire architects, do all the appropriate things that you do in a development. And it contained a caveat, like all development agreements, that the development had to be finished by the year 2015, that the place had to be up and running by 2015. Otherwise, each party could sue each other for not performing. Very important term, not performing. So this is in 2010. There's 15 years to get it done. I go back to work, traveling the country, 20,000 miles a week, trying to, win over legislatures, governors, mayors, Congress, whoever. And I'll tell you why Sessions won't go after medical marijuana when I'm done with this. So I go back to work. So 3 years later, almost 4 years later, in February of 2015, I'm laying in a hospital bed No, I'm laying in a surgical recovery room. I just had a part of my foot amputated, and I'm told that I have a bacterial disease called MRSA, and that this is the thing that takes the limbs of diabetics. And I got to tell you, I'm sick, I'm hurt, I'm tired. Now I'm just coming out, and I'm literally in a hospital recovery room. And who walks in the door? My lawyer. And I'm like, wow, what a guy. You know, he comes and visits me in the hospital. You know, I just love this guy. It's my friend. It's the morphine is pumping through my system. And he sits there and proceeds to tell me that he screwed up, that the investment was not an investment, it was a loan, and that I have 3 months to pay the loan, which was almost $550,000, and that if I don't pay it, that my family's property is going to be taken, and that I'll be sued for millions and millions of dollars, and my family will never own a car again, will never own a home again, because these people will own our assets. And I'm like, I can't even fucking believe it. I'm just, now it's a lie what he's telling me. What he's telling me is a script devised by the FBI to get me to be vulnerable. So
and he was wired at this time?
He was wired at the time? No, I'm sorry. That conversation, he wasn't wearing a wire. Because I'm sure they didn't want to explain why they sent him in to me and it was also the beginning of the big lie. The big lie, which was I took forgiveness on a loan. The big lie, which was the investment agreement was a loan, not an investment. That is a reoccurring lie, and it is based on the FBI's script and strategy to trick me into 4 years later saying, okay, fine, make the loan go away, and I'll help you.
Dan, I'm not one, but would have an investigative journalist been able to help you along the way?
Well, right now, Ralph, there are two very well-known national journalists who are writing really in-depth stories and are going to tell the entire truth. And,
Good.
And I'm really grateful to these guys. One of them is published and has a really mainstream book on the birth of the cannabis industry out, and it's a bestseller. Mm-hmm. And, he also is some sort of editor for the cannabis industry publication.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The other one is a reporter for an international publication, and was the cannabis desk for much of the time that he was the cannabis desk in another mainstream, very large, very well-known newspaper, and covered most of the stuff that was going on during the 2010 to 2015 commercial medical cannabis explosion. And in the 2015-2016 arrival of the beginning of the end of prohibition of legal marijuana.
Yeah. You yourself, sir, have a book to write, don't you?
Yeah. I'm working on several things, actually. It's not just a book. There's a documentary. There's a book, and there's a talk of something for network television, but not ABC or CBS, but more paid. It's a really popular network. I just can't say
All right, Tom. Would you continue to come on and keep me and my audience updated as to your happenings?
I'd love to, Ralph, and I got to tell you, buddy, you have been one of those folks that I felt like I started this journey with, and has been through this journey with me, and we've been it together, and every chance I get.
Well, I'm just trying to put you in a light that I know you to be in, which I don't see anywhere else. I mean, I read all those charges that came out on the internet when the day you were convicted and all that. That's not you. That's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, I can see where, just from knowing you all these years, that not to say you didn't make mistakes.
I did. I made mistakes, and Ralph, it's easy to demonize me. You know, I'm a kid from the wrong side of the tracks. I grew up in East Oakland in the 60s and 70s. I never graduated high school. I found a lot of success in the political industry, and I found a lot of love and adoration in the labor movement. And so, you know, I mean, I'm not your typical white shirt, gray tie, gray suit executive.
Right.
But I am somebody who does well at what I'm determined to do, and but it's easy to demonize me. It's just, and they did.
Yeah.
And,
well, I'm glad to be able to clear up stuff for you. That's the best I can do, Dan.
I love it, Ralph, and I'm grateful.
All right.
Grateful to you and your time.
Would you give Pam, who has been by your side all this time, all these years, big hug for me?
I will, Ralph. I will.
All right. One of my most valued Facebook friends.
And when I told her I was doing your show at 6:30, she said to say hi.
All right. That sounds great. Be well, and I just want to tell you to keep the faith, baby. How about that one?
Sounds good, buddy. Sounds real good. Thank you, Ralph.
We'll talk soon. This is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. My name is Ralph Zig Tyko. I happen to be the weak link of it all. So take that for what it's worth. Come back, listen next time. Adios, everybody.
I'll call you in a minute, Cindy.